think in everything I do in my career, there's like this strategic level to it. What could this mean for our career? How could it help us? And then there's like, the heart still of being like, I'm passionate about this story. I'm passionate about what it represents. I'm passionate about the audience that it could connect to. I accept that I am an artist and I will always make sure I am telling stories I want to tell and that I'm being authentic and that I'm passionate about what I'm doing. But I accept that the industry is the industry and that it is also a business. I never, ever in my life expected to make Lesbian Space Princess in my career, like ever. I still kind of can't believe it's the project that is like the one that's gone out into the world. You never know where anything's going to lead. And it's just like embracing that instead of putting your feet down and not being able to pivot.
Welcome to the podcast, Leela Varghese.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're a writer, director and comedian, most recently of Lesbian Space Princess, which you co-wrote and co-directed with Emma Hough Hobbs, and won Best Indie Film at the AACTA Awards, as well as the Teddy Award for Best Feature in Berlinale, which is amazing. You also directed the short film I'm the Most Racist Person I Know, which also won an AACTA this year for Best Short Film, as well as the Special Jury Award at South by Southwest. So congratulations on a huge year.
Thank you so much. I joined the Illuminati. That's why it's all happening for me.
Well, I'd love to talk to you today about the Illuminati, specifically how you've been really strategic about your career and taking those projects and creating opportunities for them, figuring out a pathway for yourself that goes beyond finishing a film. Do you want to start with just telling me what has been your career trajectory to date? Where did you start and did you always think you were going to be a director?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like the strategy part has come much later. I am actually like secretly old. I'm just brown, so I'm like 34. There was a lot of time that there was absolutely zero strategy. I started studying like more theater, maybe interested in performance, but also like writing and directing for stage. And then I was doing like one elective, which was like film. And I just loved it so much that I ditched all the theater stuff and swapped into doing like a full film, TV and new media degree. As soon as I left uni, I was really just wanted to prove that you could work and earn money. So I worked as like a runner and a production assistant for like many years on like shows on the ABC, like The Weekly with Charlie Pickering, for some production companies. That kind of killed my soul. And on the side, I was also like always auditioning. They used to do like open casting calls for like TV presenting. And I had come really close to being on like Studio 3 on the ABC back in the day. So I kind of got addicted to like auditioning and I came close on like lots and lots of different shows. And then eventually, just when my soul was completely dead, luckily I got Totally Wild on Channel 10. That was really like a big moment, I think, in my career because it just boosted my confidence back up as a creative because I was writing, producing and presenting. And so I just had so much creative control. And that's actually how I found my way back into writing and directing. And then I started making short films again. And then Film Lab eventually happened.
Film Lab is the South Australian Film Corporation's initiative to develop new feature film making talent. And that's the program that you made Lesbian Space Princess through. How did Lesbian Space Princess come about?
Well, it's purely a product of Film Lab. We sort of rose to the challenge of what that initiative is. And this is like one thing that I'll say in this podcast is that I think a lot of people try to fit their idea into grants, but I think what you need to do is kind of find an idea that works for a grant. Grants are quite specific and they're looking for, certain criteria, certain types of projects. And so, Film Lab is like low budget. How could you make a feature with like, originally when we were writing it was going to be 400,000. I had a few live action ideas, me and my girlfriend Emma, who is also the co-writer, director of Lesbian Space Princess. And we were sort of going back and forth because I wanted to do live action. She's obviously an animator. And ultimately, all my live action ideas, they were just too expensive for the initiative. And I had to like accept that I just didn't have an idea that could work for such a low budget. And then she had this idea of like, she had a theory about how you could approach making an animated film in a certain way with a low budget methodology that could work for Film Lab. We pitched all the ideas to Tom Phillips, who's our producer from We Made a Thing Productions. And he was just like, it's Lesbian Space Princess or nothing for me, just because he really believed in it. And he thought it was like a very exciting idea that just spoke to him immediately. And he also gave us this great advice of being like, I actually think for Film Lab, like, why don't we just go in hard with like one idea, because you can apply with multiple ideas. But he was like, I think we should just pick this one idea and make it very clear that we know what we're doing, that we want to tell this story, and leave no ambiguity about what it is we want to make. And so we decided ultimately just to apply with just the animated idea, which ended up being Lesbian Space Princess.
And you had the title at that point. Is that where it started? Because it is such a good title. And I think people underestimate what that can mean for a project, even from a pitching stage, but ultimately in going out and marketing it to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about title. I think like title does a lot of selling of your film. Like, I think you're correct. And a bad title can almost bury your film, even if it's a brilliant film. But yes, Emma came up with that title in a shower and then pitched it to me, and I thought it was really stupid, but then she won me over, I guess. So, and I was scared about going out into the world with a project with such a on the nose and like in your face title. But that's what the project was all about in the end. And it was scary, but I think it also represented a statement about what we were trying to do, which ultimately we both really embraced.
What was it you were trying to do with this film? What did you want to achieve as filmmakers?
Well, I mean, on some level, it was somewhat strategic. And I think in everything I do in my career, there's like this strategic level to it that's like logical and thinking about like, what could this mean for our career? How could it help us? And then there's like, the heart still of being like, I'm passionate about this story. I'm passionate about what it represents. I'm passionate about the audience that it could connect to. And so I think Emma and I were both like, this project is a great combination of both of our skills, because she loves animation, genre. She's a big genre person. She is very across like comedy and animation and just animation in general. And I was really into live action, and I did live comedy. And so I love comedy as well, and also music. And so it felt like such a good mix of both our skills to basically have a calling card to be like, here's what we can do as creatives. But then on top of that, like the thing we were really passionate about was an unapologetically bold new voice, which is what Film Lab is all about, which was cracking into the animation scene and creating a feature that we felt like we hadn't seen. Like we hadn't seen a feature directed by queer people and then also women. It just felt like it didn't exist. Emma, in fact, used to work in programming, and she was always looking for Lesbian Space Princess, like this film. It was just about wanting to serve that audience of the POC and the queer community, and then hopefully also make a film that can connect with other, like anyone on a broader level. And the Lesbian Space Princess title, I think what we like about it is that it's just like, it tells you if the film is for you. And if you watch that film and you're like, I hate this film, I mean, it's kind of like, well, if you knew you were going to hate it, like you're going to hate it. I mean, some people might have just thought they were going to like it and hate it, and that's okay too. But I think what we like about it is that many minorities are made to feel like they should make themselves small, not be bold and not be in people's faces. And I think this project is such a like, whatever, like screw you. The title itself is just like, we're not scared of you. Like we are going to call this project this, and we're going to make this project.
I saw it at Adelaide Film Festival for the first time, which is probably a more diverse audience than you may have gotten at other screenings, for example. But I loved that you could see different pockets of the theatre laughing at different elements. Oh, there's the lesbian joke that I don't get, but there's the Twilight reference, and people crack up at that if they've seen Twilight. And there's the straight white Malians, and it just seemed to hit on so many different levels. So it's a beautifully layered film, as well as being very specific to its audience at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that that's an indication of when collaboration can work really well. Like obviously sometimes collaboration can be too many cooks in the kitchen, but I think like our whole team together, we were very like open to like, it's like Emma's sense of humor, my sense of humor really leading the ship, whilst also embracing like the jokes that like maybe the producers like Tom had, or Jeremy from WeMat, or even like every single animator and every single voice actor. It was an interesting in the end, because we were like, wow, this film does kind of have a joke for everyone. And I think that that is the product of having co-directors and then also embracing a lot of the hilarious people that worked on the project as well.
You make this project, it's with a very small team, but a very collaborative team, and you come up with a finished product. What's the process from there of getting it out into the world, and how did you turn it into something that has the reach that it does?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge learning process. Feature films was not something I was like necessarily always thinking about, and I never realized like the whole business and strategy side of it. Often you'll have an international sales agent that will help you with your festivals and getting into your festivals. In our case, we actually got into Berlin before we actually went with an international sales agent, because sometimes getting into a big festival, if you're a more indie film, can actually help you with like getting your international sales agent. But it's tricky because some films need the international sales agent to have a connection to festivals to get that shot at a festival. So it's really dependent of your project. I think in our case, we had been lucky enough to make some really great connections with festivals. So we had just applied like directly, and then the sales agents came on board. And then they take over like your run really from there. The other important thing is that at your premiere, it's really important to have your sales agent signed to your project, because they are there and they are selling your film, essentially, when it's getting its biggest amount of buzz. So whilst it was premiering, discussions about selling it to different territories had begun, as well as like other festivals piquing their interest in showing the film.
Were you aiming for Berlin specifically, or did you have a range of festivals that you were targeting to hope you would get into one?
I mean, look, beggars can't be choosers. I think if we said that we were aiming for Berlin, I think we were just aiming for like any of the, like we would have just loved to get into any big film festival. The real main ones we were going for were Sundance, Berlin, and South by Southwest. Berlin was the first one to accept and offer the film. Not that it got accepted by the other festivals anyway, but it's like I said, beggars can't be choosers. We were taking anything. we were excited. We still can't believe that it got into Berlin. But I say that, but Emma would say that like as an animation lover and expert, she always knew that she thought that Berlin would probably be the likeliest chance, because they do have that love of animation, and they do have the big love of like supporting queer cinema as well. And so I think she always knew that maybe that was our best chance.
In terms of selection, there is a bit of behind the scenes relationship building that goes on sometimes with selectors. I know Screen Australia often has selectors out, and they're introducing content that's been made in the past year to those selectors and putting it forward. Did you have any connections, whether through Adelaide Film Festival or Emma working in animation or programming, that you could reach out to? Or was it really just, hey, here's this film, it's going into the pot with the other thousands of entries?
Well, we were lucky enough to go to Cannes with the AF Goes to Cannes. That initiative was really great because that was while the film was still in production. And yeah, we were lucky enough to meet with different representatives from festivals and get to meet them in person. I think it makes a big difference if they meet you in person. Like once a programmer actually has met you and they know you and they've heard about your project or they've heard your pitch, I think it's a bit different, because like when you get in contact, they know who you are. I guess part of the point of that whole trip was to just make connections with like really helpful people. And so like the sales agent that we went with, we had actually met them quite a long time and had been discussing with them for quite a while before we officially like went with them as our sales agent. And we'd been talking with other sales agents as well since Cannes. That was quite a bit before the film was actually finished. And so like, yeah, that is the thing. It's like there's so much going on even as you're in production that you'd think would happen after production, but it's kind of handy to start it like earlier in the process.
How far ahead of Berlin was your sales agent brought on board? They were there for the premiere and they were there for that process with you?
I honestly can't remember off the top of my head, but it was not too much before the festival, like it may be a month or two before the festival. But yeah, they were there doing market screenings and like, you know, meeting and talking about the film. What was really great with that is that they also helped organize like PR. So they also helped us get a lot of press as well for the premiere in Berlin, which is also another side of it that you don't necessarily think about. It's actually quite important, I think, when your film is premiering to have that good burst of media publishing about it and talking about it and even reviewing it.
Were you talking about local press in Germany or worldwide press and interviews that could come out later? What were you aiming for in building that buzz?
I think it was just building buzz in general. Like I said, it was also new to us that I think like we were just like, if anything popped up, we were really excited. And we happened to be really fortunate that a lot of outlets were just interested in the title. And it was also cool because we got announced in the early announcements for Berlin. That meant that media could start to trickle in earlier than if it had been announced a little bit later. We kind of just like followed their lead because it's our first film, you know.
And what has come out of that in hindsight? What do you think were the best things that happened from Berlin or the connections that you can now see looking back?
The biggest and most important thing for us was just getting it out into the world. We never necessarily thought of this as being like a film that was going to like make money. It's very much the biggest thing that it has been, I think, for all of us is just like career accelerator. Like, I think that we got to travel the world, we got to go to all these amazing festivals, and I feel like there's recognition for our names and our work now internationally as well as in Australia. And so there's all these connections that feel much more accessible and all these opportunities that feel much more accessible for like the future. We have sold to like a lot of territories and most of the territories that we would have hoped to. And so that's really exciting to think that it's getting out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the importance is of festivals nowadays with so much online and streaming? Do you think festivals still play a role from a filmmaker's perspective?
Yeah, I think that like there are a lot of different ways to be successful. And so like all I can say is that my way forward has been festivals, and I'm not somebody who loves like the online medium of storytelling. And so I think that like different types of artists, maybe a festival is more like the natural path for them, especially people who are very much like film is my thing and some of these other paths just don't connect with them as an artist. The bigger festivals, like often that's a chance to meet with like management, which is really exciting. Like a short film at a big festival, I think can be quite a career changing moment in that sense. Like, for example, like we have management, but the management we got through the short film playing at South by. We did get approached for like some management from Lesbian Space Princess, but it was actually like the short playing at South by, which happened to be a festival that has a lot more management that goes to it, where a lot of like conversations about management happened. And like the manager that we met with like him in person and at South by and chatted with him. So I think that like festivals are really great in that sense. And then on top of that, you might forge a connection and your feature might then premiere at that festival too. So like it's about building the connection for like your whole career as well. And I actually have to give credit to Serena, the producer of I'm the Most Racist Person I Know, because she was like saying, I think you need to go international first because I feel like you've kind of always done the Australian circuit. And she was even like, I don't think that your voice is necessarily always going to like get the love it needs in Australia. So she's like, I actually think you should go international first. And I do think that that's always like a good strategy because those big festivals, they won't accept it if it's premiered already in Australia. So you have to think strategically about what is the biggest top tier festival I could go for.
Can you tell us a bit more about I'm the Most Racist Person I Know? Because even that film, I think for a short, is groundbreaking in many ways.
For me, it's really funny because it was meant to be an experiment in directing something more dramatic than my previous films, but everyone keeps being like, it's so funny. And like, it is funny, but it was like definitely approached in quite a different way. Initially, it was written for the Queer Screen pitch, and it was much more like of a comedy. It was even set in like the daytime, and it was set in a cafe at the beginning rather than a bar. And then in a strategic pivot, as well as also like a desire to grow as a director, decided to go like, what could I do to elevate this film? And also think a little bit more strategically about potentially cracking it with festivals, which I found that I'd struggled in the past with like comedic films to really crack bigger festivals. And so we decided to shoot it in dark, moody lighting instead of like daytime. And I decided to direct it as more of a drama than a comedy this time. It falls more into dramedy. And so that was like strategic in the end to like elevate the film and sort of create something that felt like it was more likely to succeed in the more prestigious festivals than if it had just been a full-blown comedy.
And when you were making those decisions, was that just from having been at festivals in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was from being at festivals that I hadn't been selected in and seeing the films that were made, seeing the films that got in, and then thinking about like, what's the difference here between like the content I'm making and the content that's getting selected. And it's interesting, like for a feature, you're better off with something that's genre, something that stands out, that's bold. But my own assessment was that for shorts, dramatic stories tend to do better, and something that's kind of punching does better. Like, I felt like I was never one of those filmmakers that would get into even like MIFF or Sydney Film Festival. And so I think after just like assessing it and thinking about it, it was about like, how could I take what was my own authentic voice, but also just, I guess, pivot a little bit without compromising as an artist so that the film might succeed in larger platforms than my previous work had.
And was this one a title first project as well?
Maybe most projects that I make are title first, but I think like probably the seed of the idea was there kind of at the same time. Yeah, the title was controversial. One of the only like script notes I ever got was like, get rid of the title. Everyone wanted us to change the title, but nothing felt right. I think once again, it was very similar to Lesbian Space Princess, where I actually think the title of the movie informs your viewing experience of it. And I think it's actually quite important that you see the title and how you experience the movie then is changed. And if it was called something else, I think it would just be a different experience.
Yeah, it is that bold calling card for this is what you're about to watch.
And it's meant to be evoking. I guess the whole film is meant to be a conversation starter. I don't want people to take away what my intention was of that short. I just want people to take away like potentially just having a conversation about what they took away from the film. I think that's like always the aim with anything that you make. You just want it to evoke conversation.
With travel and festivals, you've attended a lot of the festivals across the last year. Has that been a benefit, being able to see how different audiences around the world have experienced the films?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think when you make your first feature, it's like you got to go and experience it. I don't know if I will travel as much ever again with a film, but I know Emma loves it, so she probably will. But absolutely, like South by Southwest was such an important festival to go to. I felt like there was a lot of opportunities that were presented by being at that festival, which was really cool, like meeting management and taking meetings during the festival. Like traveling and seeing it with different audiences is also really cool because, yeah, you get a sense of how your project works in different parts of the world. But yeah, each festival is different. They're all just like a different experience, but you just never know who you're going to meet. Or for example, like somebody saw our film, we weren't there, but somebody saw our film from a really cool company in LA, and we did an intro video, and they liked the intro video a lot. So then they wanted to have a general meeting with us, and then they also wanted to like chat to us about potentially working with them in the future. And so like you just never know what you're going to get from having your film play somewhere where it otherwise wouldn't have been seen. So, and especially it's like different. It's very different when someone gets sent a link of your film versus them seeing it with an audience. Because when they see it with an audience, they go, oh, these guys are able to get this like audience to laugh, that like they've been laughing like, throughout the film. Wow. Like that's like a something that we're looking for. And so who knows if they'd watched it in their office and hadn't gone to the festival, they might have just been like, I don't know, is this funny? I don't know. And interestingly with Berlin, I think that a lot of their, I get the sense that a lot of their selections come from them watching the films together. So they get to experience the feeling of how they're all reacting. And so it's like creates a different sense probably when they decide to select films than if like it's just programmer watching it on their own.
For filmmakers that are starting out and getting a film off the ground, how would you encourage them to start thinking about marketing and distribution and everything that comes after delivery of the film?
That was like the biggest slow burn of a learn for me. You spend so much time focusing on like writing it and then getting it made, and you're so burnt out by the time that you've got it made that I see a lot of people make projects and then they kind of just like enter the first festival that's available to them, and then it's just like, is that what all that hard work was for? And so I guess I would just encourage everyone to think where your film is going and the afterlife of your film is almost like the most important part of the process. And you need to be thinking about that from script level to production level to your schedule, because you need to know which festival is the first festival you need to have it ready for. So you need to be thinking about where the film is going from the very beginning. And maybe you're like strategically going, I think this is a Sundance film. Maybe you want to like, make it really feel like a Sundance film. Or maybe like, I think you got to be strategic about what are those festivals that my tone and my voice really belongs to. And then go, that's the big aim. We need to shoot by this date, edit it by this date, and then so we can have it submitted by this date. I think in Australia, I see so much hard work go into making products. And then like, I don't necessarily, like some people, I feel like I don't see them go very far. And I go, that's so sad because it's so much hard work. And I learned that like the hard way as well. Like it's like when you tell your friend to break up with somebody, but they have to wait till they're ready to break up with them. There's something to be said in that, like this lesson is maybe something that we all just naturally have to learn. And then you have to have like the hunger to like try and like do better with your next project. There's something to be said for that. But in the effort of like helping people potentially not make mistakes that I've made and others have made, I just really think that you should be thinking about the whole picture of your film, and that includes where it's going. And then in Australia, I think that like it would really help if funding bodies, part of the mission of helping projects get made is also trying to figure out connections and guiding people and reminding them to think about that part of the process, because the whole point of funding those projects is to get them out there, to show that Australia has a voice, to show that Australia has emerging voices. The best way to do that is to help creatives know where to put their project. And then I think every time I've been more strategic about knowing where I wanted a film to go, it's always worked out better for me. Like my first film after uni that really like popped off was the Tropfest film Crush. And that was made like for Tropfest. And, maybe Tropfest is a good example of how you can practice that, because it just came back. And I found like that was like such a big moment for me. And it was such an inspiring experience to get to go to Tropfest. I'd like been there before and like not had a film play, and then been like so in awe of it. And then to have a film play was like, whoa, this is crazy. But Tropfest is a great example of you've got your whole strategy, because you're making it for Tropfest, sending it in, you're like, I hope it gets into Tropfest. And so it almost forces you to think about the whole journey of the film, rather than if you just make a film and it's just got nowhere to go and you don't know what you're doing with it.
I guess I'm curious about where you see the line between festivals and audiences. Do you think festivals have a really clear sense of who their audience is, and therefore by making for a festival, you're making for a specific type of audience? Or do you go further than that and think about the end user that's going to be experiencing your product?
Yeah, I guess when I say make it for a festival, you're not pivoting what you're doing for a festival. You're just being strategic about which festival. And I do think festivals do connect. They know exactly who their audience is. And that's why it's like, don't get offended if your film doesn't get in, because it's often just a representation of the fact that it's a curation of films. It's films that they think are their vibe. It's films that they want to make that year. It's the stories that feel important to them that year. But when it is a festival that's a great fit, it's like amazing, because it's a mutually beneficial experience, because it's like, this is my voice and this festival really responds to that voice, and now it's getting this like great recognition. But yeah, absolutely, like they know what they want and they know what they're doing. That's why it's the same as like when you're applying for a grant. Like you don't want to waste your time on a festival that just isn't going to want your project with a grant. You don't want to try to fit a project that is just not right for that application. And it's like this thing with the industry where I think a lot of artists, God bless us all, we're artists. So we're like, we hate that there's like all these structures and these like organizations, and it sucks. But it depends. Like, do you want to be an artist that gets your art seen? Or do you just want to make it? And I'm totally there with you. If you just want to make your art, you don't care where it's going, and you're just a beautiful soul that just loves making art. For me, I care about elevating my career. And so like, I like to think about all these things. And I guess I just accept that film is a business. Like, I accept that I am an artist, and I will always make sure I am telling stories I want to tell, and that I'm being authentic, and that I'm passionate about what I'm doing. But I accept that the industry is the industry, and that it is also a business. You'd be surprised how often you make a project that started for a specific grant, but because you poured your heart into it, you love it in the end. Never compromise on caring about and loving the project you're making. But I think some people are very unmovable, and I do think that it's surprising where you can end up when you do just collaborate or pivot your ideas a little bit. Like, I never, ever in my life expected to make Lesbian Space Princess in my career, like, ever. I still kind of can't believe it's the project that is like the one that's gone out into the world, is like the biggest thing that I've made. But look, it's like you never know where anything's going to lead, and it's just like embracing that instead of being like very like putting your feet down and not being able to pivot.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of the constraint and the flexibility at the same time. So you're working within the constraints of a particular grant or a particular festival, and then you're flexible as to what might happen from there, and tuning that into your voice and your artistry, and collaborating with people that you know and trust, and look at the result.
And constraint is actually a blessing a lot of the time. It seems like the worst, but it's actually like, we as artists, we need the structures. You got to play the game, but try to play the game in a way that you're not compromising on your own integrity and voice.
Yeah.
Which means maybe you have to compromise a tiny bit. But you don't actually. I don't feel like I've ever actually compromised on my voice.
I hope that when you're working with the right producers and the right team, that what might feel like a compromise at the time actually ends up being the best thing for the project, or helps you to find your voice in a more authentic way.
Absolutely. But that is hard. I mean, I guess it's like, it's so true. But it's like, and that's why finding your voice is so important. Because once you know your voice, you can receive all that feedback, and then also like know how to use it. If you know the film you're making, you know what to take from that feedback. I guess the only reason I say that is that I think sometimes people see it as really like stressful and not helpful. And I think that that's often more of a reflection of them as an artist than it is of the feedback. But sometimes feedback in general is really annoying. But you, the artist, if you know what you're doing, will just be like, that feedback's annoying. It's not correct. Actually, what they're saying is this. And so I'll just go back to them and be like, you said this, but I think this is a solution. And then often the person will be like, you're right. Actually, yeah, that totally works.
Once you've had success at major festivals and you have released a film that goes to so many territories, what are the opportunities that open up from there, and how are you planning to leverage them? What's the next strategic move for you?
Retirement. I mean, I truly wish retirement. No, I'm just joking. I mean, to be completely honest, I'm so burnt out, and I feel like I don't want to create some fantasy for people where it's like, I do see people go from like one really great feature to like Michael Shanks, who did Together, is now shooting his next feature. But I think he in the background has also been hustling and had multiple screenplays cooking. And so that was like a possibility for him. Whereas like with us, Lesbian Space Princess, we never expected to have it. I mean, we didn't necessarily think it would get picked at all. So it's not like we have like had heaps of things in the bank, and then having the project out in the world has also really time restricted us because we've been traveling. There's constantly things popping up to deal with, even after the film is finished, that you should prepare yourself for if you make an indie film, is that like a lot of the time after the film is made also ends up having to go into that film, because it's quite intense in a way that I don't think anyone explains to you. And also save money if you want to travel to the festivals like that your film gets into. But in general though, like I think for us, like definitely the door for continuing to try to get more features made is like definitely open. And so we're working on feature ideas. I want to make a live action feature, and then Emma would love to make another animated feature together. We'd love to keep developing other feature ideas too. There's potential TV opportunities as well. In the feature film realm, the best possible outcome afterwards is that you make another feature, which doesn't really happen for everyone. But I guess I feel hopeful and delusional about it. Like, I block out all the things that say, "Don't go forward with this career," and I just go, "It's gonna be fine," whilst also being strategic. But I just block out all the things that are just pointlessly negative, and I just always truly, like, fantasize and believe that, like, I will make another feature or another feature will happen, because doing the opposite of that doesn't help you anyway. So you may as well just be delusional in this career because you kind of need to protect yourself. Some great things could happen and nothing could happen, but we'll wait and see. So I think at the end of the day, like, everybody's career is defined by you. And so it's how fast you move, it's how fast you hustle, and gotta get right in those scripts. So
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. We ask all of our guests on the podcast the same final question of what your big idea is to shape the future of the screen industry. Do you have a big idea for us?
I think my big idea is that funding needs to include, like, helping you with your distribution plan for your project on top of just funding and getting it made. What is a good path for this project? Which I feel like maybe funding bodies think that that does exist, but I don't think it exists enough.
And if you were going to come up with like the ultimate version of that, what would it look like?
I guess, like, it would be, like, potentially, like, introducing you to, like, festivals or sales agents, because obviously some of those things are very protected. Maybe it is just like a consultation session where there is somebody who really understands the industry and can chat you through festivals, what project you're making, what it will suit, and just make you think about that. Also teach you about the fact that some only accept world premieres, teach you about the fact that you got to look at all the dates, because you might want this festival, but you accepted this festival early on, which now means you can't play at the festival that you really wanted.
It's interesting because I think that the agencies assume that the producers and the distributors take on that role potentially, but there is maybe a disconnect there with early career producers, or if you don't have a distributor on board for your project yet, or if you don't know how to set about finding the right distributor who is going to know the correct pathway for your film. So it really is this ecosystem.
I guess in my head, the fantasy of it is that it is a part of the whole, if you receive the funding, somehow that is a part of your experience of getting the funding, is support in that way. Because I think that's the thing, if I had to go back and look at my career, is like what I think I just didn't know for such a long time and didn't think about strategically.
Yeah, and I think it probably does take until you get to that level of, investment funding for a feature film or a TV show that they expect those partnerships to be part of the process. Like, they expect you to have a distributor on board. They expect you to have that audience plan mapped out. But in the short film and low budget space, there's a huge amount of people who are very creative, very talented, that aren't being taught those pathways that do lead to the gatekeepers in order to get them seen.
It's all tricky, isn't it? But I mean, look, AF Goes to Cannes, that was a great initiative. So, maybe it's also that. Maybe that's part of getting funding for a film, is that you also get an experience like that. You go to a market and you get to meet people.
Thank you so much, Leela. We Interrupt This broadcast is recorded on the unceded lands of the
Gadigal people of the Eora Nation,
the Turrbal and Yagara people,
the Yugambeh language people, and the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians and first storytellers of these regions.
Always was, always will be.